Let's talk about that daily roller coaster that so many of us are stuck on. You know the one? The energy crashes, the brain fog, those cravings that just won't quit. Today, we're going to dive into some simple, really powerful ways to finally get off that ride for good. Does this sound familiar? I mean, for so many of us, our day is just dominated by thoughts of food. What should I eat? When am I going to eat? Why did I just eat that? It's honestly exhausting. But what if all that mental chatter isn't some kind of personal failing? What if it's actually a biological signal that we can learn to control? Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible force that's secretly running your day, that hidden glucose roller coaster. Then we'll get right into the good stuff, our toolkit. We'll start with the simplest fix imaginable, then a brilliant food order hack, a strategy for quieting all that food noise, and finally, we'll look at some next-level fueling strategies. So, what is this hidden roller coaster I keep talking about? Well, it's all about glucose, which is just our body's main fuel. But the problem is, when the delivery of that fuel is all over the place, it throws our entire system, our mood, our energy, everything, completely out of whack. And the main villain in this story? It's something called a glucose spike. Basically, it's a super fast surge in blood sugar right after you eat. Now, when these spikes happen over and over, they set off this crazy chain reaction in your body that leads to a whole bunch of problems you might just think are a normal part of your day. And I bet some of this looks really familiar, right? That classic 3 p.m. slump where you feel like you'd do anything for a coffee or a cookie. Those relentless cravings for sugar. Having trouble focusing at work. These aren't just random feelings. They are direct symptoms of your blood sugar going on a wild ride. They're literally signals your body is sending you. All right, let's get into the solutions. And I promise you, this first one is so simple, it's almost funny, but it is incredibly powerful. You don't need a gym, you don't need special equipment, you don't even have to change what you eat. All you have to do is walk.
I absolutely love this metaphor. I want you to think of your muscles, especially the big ones in your legs, as actual sponges. So when you eat, sugar floods into your bloodstream. By simply getting up and moving those muscles, they start soaking up all that excess sugar to use as energy right then and there.
And here's the best part. It's so easy to do. The whole process is this simple. Finish your meal, and then, sometime in the next hour or so, just go for a gentle 10-minute walk. It doesn't have to be a power walk. It doesn't have to make you sweat. Honestly, even just walking around your living room while you're on a phone call works. Your muscles will do the rest. And the payoff for this tiny bit of effort, it's huge, and it happens right away. You get way smaller blood sugar spikes, which means less fat getting stored, and the best part, you completely avoid that post-meal energy crash. That means much more stable, steady energy all day long. Okay, on to our next hack. And this one is a game changer. It's for anyone out there who thinks managing blood sugar means giving up all your favorite foods. I'm here to tell you, it's not about restriction, it's all about strategy. I mean, just think about that for a second. This question completely reframes the problem, doesn't it? It takes the focus off of good foods and bad foods and puts it on just being a little bit smarter about the sequence of your meal. So here it is, the science-backed magic order. You start with anything that's fiber, so your vegetables, your salad, then you move on to your protein and your fats, and you save the starches and the sugars, the bread, the pasta, the rice, the dessert, for the very end of your meal. So how does this actually work? Well, it's pretty cool. The fiber from the veggies you eat first creates this kind of mesh, like a shield, in your intestines. And that shield physically slows down how quickly the sugars from the carbs you eat later get absorbed. It just flattens the whole curve. Okay, but how much of a difference does this really make? Get ready for this. One study found that eating your meal in this exact order can slash the overall glucose spike by up to 73%. 73! That is a massive change, and all you did was rearrange the food on your plate. So we've covered two really powerful physical hacks. But let's be honest. The battle isn't just happening in our bloodstream, a lot of it is happening in our heads. So let's talk about how to quiet that constant mental chatter about food. You know that constant nagging stream of thoughts in your head about food? Well, it turns out there's actually a name for it, food noise. And it's not just, wondering what's for dinner. It's that relentless, almost obsessive loop that can completely hijack your focus and just drain your mental energy. And if you feel like it's taking up all your brain power, you're not wrong. Research shows that the average person makes over 200 food-related decisions every single day. 200! This leads to a very real thing called decision fatigue, where your ability to make good choices literally gets worse as the day goes on.
So here's the secret. Trying to fight this with just willpower is a losing battle. It's like trying to hold your breath indefinitely. The real solution is to make fewer decisions. By creating a system with something like meal planning, you make those choices ahead of time, when your mind is sharp, and you free up all that precious mental energy for the rest of your life.
And please, please remember this. When a craving hits you like a ton of bricks, it is not a sign that you are weak or that you have no willpower. It's a biological signal, plain and simple, often triggered by a sudden drop in your blood sugar. When you stabilize your glucose, you don't have to fight the cravings anymore. You're just removing the reason they show up in the first place.
Okay, for our last section, let's look at a more advanced strategy for those who want to go even deeper. So far, we've talked about managing the glucose you get from carbs. But what if your body could tap into a totally different, much more stable fuel source? What if you could just get off the roller coaster for good?
This is where things get really interesting. On one hand, you've got the high-carb experience, that familiar roller coaster of spikes and crashes. But on the other hand, you have an alternative fuel, ketones. These are little energy molecules your body makes from fat when carbs aren't around. And when you run on ketones, you get this remarkably stable, consistent energy supply that just steadily nourishes your brain, with none of the drama.
And this is the real psychological superpower. When your brain is being constantly fed by a stable fuel like ketones, it just stops sending out those desperate, urgent signals for a quick sugar fix. People who experience this often describe it as reaching a new level of indifference to the junk food that used to control them. The cravings don't just get weaker, they basically vanish.
So, I'll leave you with this one final thought to chew on. For years, maybe you've believed that your struggle with food and energy was a personal failing, a lack of willpower. But what if it was never about your character? What if all this time you were simply fighting the wrong battle against a chaotic and inefficient fuel source? Thanks so much for joining me for this one.